Welcome to Ancient Conspiracy Files. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode, we journey deep into one of the oldest stories ever written, one that suggests the gods of ancient Mesopotamia were not gods at all, but visitors from another world with a purpose: to create, control, and possibly exploit humanity. From cuneiform tablets to modern whistleblowers, the theory of the Anunnaki challenges everything we think we know about our origin, our past, and the forces that may still shape us today. The earliest accounts of the Anunnaki come from Sumer, a civilization that rose in the fertile plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers over 5,000 years ago. Considered one of the cradles of civilization, ancient Sumeria introduced many of the foundational elements of organized society: written language, law codes, monumental architecture, and sophisticated astronomy. It was in this context that the Anunnaki first appeared, etched into clay tablets in cuneiform script, spoken of in hymns, epics, and myths that would later be adopted and adapted by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The word Anunnaki is typically translated as those who came down from the heavens, or more literally, princely offspring, or offspring of Anu, the sky god. According to Sumerian cosmology, the Anunnaki were divine beings who descended from the heavens and played a direct role in shaping humanity and governing the earth. These beings were not portrayed merely as gods in the abstract sense, but as rulers, administrators of land, law, and society. They were assigned different regions of the earth, each responsible for specific domains, from agriculture to warfare, from healing to judgment. Some were benevolent, others were harsh or indifferent. They were deeply involved in human affairs. Ancient texts such as the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, and the Epic of Gilgamesh reference the Anunnaki in roles that blur the lines between divine authority and direct intervention in earthly matters. In these stories, they were not passive creators, but active participants in shaping history, issuing decrees, and even punishing humanity. The flood myth, which appears in both Mesopotamian and later biblical narratives, attributes the decision to wipe out early humans to the displeasure of the Anunnaki, suggesting not only their control over life and death, but a troubling degree of manipulation. Modern scholars generally interpret these stories as symbolic, mythological frameworks that early civilizations used to understand natural forces and political power. However, alternative researchers have long argued that these texts may encode memories of real events and real beings, misunderstood or reinterpreted over time. Central to this argument is the notion that ancient people did not invent gods in their image, but rather recorded what they experienced, encounters with powerful beings who came from the sky, imparted knowledge, and established control. Adding complexity is the sheer consistency of these themes across different cultures. Civilizations separated by oceans and centuries, Maya, Inca, Dogon, Egyptian, share myths of gods or sky beings who descended, created humans, and departed with promises to return. While mainstream academia attributes this to the universal human impulse to explain the unknown, others see in it a global pattern of contact. In Sumerian art, the Anunnaki are often depicted as taller than average humanoids, sometimes with horned helmets or stylized wings. Though not alien in appearance by modern standards, their attire and posture suggest authority, knowledge, and separation from ordinary humans. More intriguing is their connection to forbidden knowledge: mathematics, metallurgy, astronomy, disciplines that appeared suddenly and fully formed in the archaeological record, without clear precedents. Over the centuries, these figures were not forgotten. As Sumer gave way to Babylon and Assyria, the Anunnaki were preserved in ritual and belief. Their names changed, their roles evolved, but the idea of powerful beings from above, who once created and governed humanity, remained embedded in the cultural memory of Mesopotamia. The ancient world did not see these beings as mythological abstractions. They were real, present, and in some traditions, expected to return. The world of ancient Mesopotamia was shaped by towering city-states like Ur, Uruk, and Eridu, places where the temples of the gods dominated both skyline and society. Each city had its own patron deity, and each deity was said to be part of the larger pantheon of the Anunnaki. These weren't remote spiritual figures. They were described as rulers who governed the affairs of humanity directly. Temples, or ziggurats, were not merely houses of worship, they were considered the literal dwelling places of the gods on earth. Priests didn't just pray to the Anunnaki, they served them, enacted their laws, and managed the wealth of the temples as stewards of divine will. Among the Anunnaki, specific figures began to emerge with defined roles and legacies. Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation, is often credited in Sumerian myth as the architect of humanity itself. In the Atrahasis epic, Enki defies the council of the gods to preserve human life during the Great Flood, providing warnings and instructions to a mortal man, an act later mirrored in the biblical story of Noah. Then there is Enlil, a more authoritarian figure who is often depicted as humanity's judge, issuing plagues or natural disasters as punishment for disobedience. Anu, the sky god, remained more distant but was revered as the ultimate source of divine authority. These gods are not described as immaterial entities. Their actions suggest presence, physical interaction, conflict, and even political intrigue. Stories of the Anunnaki read like chronicles of a ruling elite. They dispute territories, arrange marriages to solidify power, and enforce laws. Some modern researchers interpret this as evidence that the Anunnaki were more than mythological constructs. They were once living beings with command over advanced systems of governance, possibly even technology. The city of Eridu, often regarded as the first city in the world, is central to this theory. According to Sumerian tradition, it was the original home of the gods. The Sumerian king list, a document carved into stone, describes a time when kingship descended from heaven to Eridu. This list includes reigns that lasted tens of thousands of years, a detail often dismissed by scholars as symbolic or mythological. But those who support the Anunnaki theory argue that such extended lifespans are more consistent with beings who were either not human or who possessed biotechnology far beyond our understanding. The ziggurats themselves offer another clue. Unlike simple shrines, these step pyramids were massive undertakings of architectural precision. Their tiered levels mirrored the celestial realm, and some have suggested they functioned as platforms, perhaps for observation, perhaps for landing. Though no evidence supports these structures serving as literal spacecraft launch pads, the symmetry, placement, and alignment of the temples have led to speculation that their original function has been misunderstood. Further afield, archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey challenge the accepted timeline of civilization. Built over 11,000 years ago, it predates agriculture, writing, and metallurgy, yet features complex megalithic structures with astronomical alignments and advanced artistry. While not directly connected to the Anunnaki in any existing texts, sites like Göbekli Tepe raise questions about lost knowledge and forgotten builders, fitting neatly into theories that suggest intervention by advanced beings long before history officially began. The presence of elongated skulls discovered in ancient burial sites throughout Mesopotamia, as well as in regions as far as Peru and Egypt, has also been linked by some researchers to the Anunnaki or similar beings. Though often explained as cultural cranial deformation, others claim these skulls show anatomical differences too great to be human, suggesting a possible hybrid lineage. Through ancient texts, monumental cities, and unexplained artifacts, the civilizations of the ancient Near East offer more than myth. They provide a stage on which the Anunnaki moved, ruled, and left their imprint. To some, these clues point to gods, to others to something else entirely, something older, and possibly something not of this earth. The central claims of the Anunnaki theory propose that these ancient gods were not gods at all, but extraterrestrial beings who arrived on Earth tens or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. According to this theory, they came from a distant planet known as Nibiru, sometimes referred to as Planet X, whose elongated orbit brings it into the inner solar system every 30,600 years. Proponents of this idea argue that the Anunnaki arrived during one of these passes, seeking to extract natural resources from Earth, particularly gold, which they allegedly needed to repair or stabilize their planet's atmosphere. The claim was largely popularized in the 1970s by author Zecharia Sitchin, whose series The Earth Chronicles reinterpreted Mesopotamian texts through the lens of ancient astronaut theory. Sitchin, who was not a formally trained linguist, claimed that he translated cuneiform tablets in a way that revealed the Anunnaki as technologically advanced spacefaring beings. In his interpretation, they genetically engineered Homo sapiens by combining their own DNA with that of early hominids, creating humans as a slave race to mine gold and serve their needs. According to Sitchin's narrative, early humans were not simply created and abandoned. The Anunnaki were deeply involved in shaping human culture, teaching agriculture, governance, metallurgy, and astronomy. Figures like Enki are seen not just as gods of water or wisdom, but as scientists and bioengineers who played a direct role in modifying early humans. This intervention, proponents claim, explains the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in ancient civilizations, with no clear evolutionary pathway. The Epic of Creation, or Enuma Elish, is frequently cited in support of these theories. In its verses, gods create humans out of the blood of a slain god, mixing divine essence with earthly clay. While traditionally interpreted as metaphor, ancient astronaut theorists argue that this could be a mythologized version of actual genetic manipulation, one passed down in the only way early humans could understand. Other Sumerian texts, such as the Atra-Hasis epic, describe the gods becoming weary of their labors and creating humans to take over their work. The text includes references to a rebellion among lesser gods who were forced to dig canals and work the land, tasks that were later assigned to mankind. This division of labor aligns with the idea of engineered beings created for servitude, an idea that recurs in the later Babylonian and Hebrew texts in modified forms. The theory extends to suggest that the Anunnaki's rule over Earth was not brief. They allegedly established kingship, founded cities, and maintained influence for thousands of years. The long reigns recorded in the Sumerian king list, some lasting over 28,000 years, are viewed by proponents not as poetic exaggerations, but as literal records of Anunnaki rulers whose extended lifespans were due to their advanced biology or technology. Sitchin's interpretation also touches on the idea that the Anunnaki eventually withdrew from Earth, leaving behind fragmented civilizations and a genetically modified species, humanity, to continue its path. Their departure, and the catastrophic events that accompanied it, may be preserved in flood myths found in nearly every ancient culture. The Great Flood, according to these theories, was not merely divine punishment, but the result of celestial events tied to Nibiru's orbit, events that devastated Earth and reset human civilization. The core of the Anunnaki theory rests on two radical claims: that humanity was engineered by non-human intelligence in deep antiquity, and that much of our early history, especially the leaps in knowledge, architecture, and social organization, was guided or accelerated by this influence. To supporters, this theory offers an alternative explanation for the inconsistencies, gaps, and unanswered questions that continue to haunt the timeline of human origins. To critics, it is an imaginative blend of myth and pseudoscience. But whether viewed as revelation or fantasy, the theory continues to provoke and persist. Supporters of the Anunnaki theory often point to a series of physical artifacts, ancient texts, and unexplained technological leaps as evidence that humanity may have been influenced or even engineered by a non-human intelligence. One of the most frequently cited categories of evidence comes from Mesopotamian cylinder seals and relief carvings. These small, intricate artifacts, many over 5,000 years old, depict scenes of gods interacting with humans. Some show what appear to be winged figures operating complex machinery or seated before star-like symbols. Perhaps the most controversial is a seal catalogued as VA243, housed in the Berlin Museum, which appears to show a solar system with multiple planets orbiting a central sun. Advocates claim this image reflects an awareness of planets not visible to the naked eye, knowledge supposedly unknown until the modern era. Mainstream archaeologists argue that these interpretations are flawed. They suggest the seal's solar system is a stylized star, and that the accompanying circles are decorative or symbolic. Still, to those who believe ancient humans received advanced instruction, the image is too precise to ignore. They argue that its existence suggests either a lost civilization with astronomical capabilities or the presence of an advanced race guiding early humanity. Another often discussed artifact is the Baghdad Battery. Discovered in the 1930s near modern-day Baghdad, these small clay jars contain copper cylinders and iron rods. When filled with an acidic substance like vinegar or lemon juice, they produce a small electrical charge. Some researchers propose these objects could have been used for electroplating, medicinal stimulation, or ritualistic shock therapy. Though disputed by many historians, they are held up by proponents as proof that ancient people either had access to advanced technology or were following instructions passed down from a more advanced source. Additional evidence comes from ancient texts that appear to record astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed at the time. Babylonian star charts, for instance, contain detailed records of celestial bodies and movements, including the 25,920-year precession of the equinoxes, a phenomenon only fully understood in recent centuries. Similarly, the Sumerians are believed to have known the length of the lunar month to within a fraction of a second, long before the development of modern timekeeping instruments. Such accuracy raises the question of whether these measurements were discovered through long-term observation or whether the knowledge was inherited, fully formed. The Anunnaki theory also draws support from the sudden appearance of agriculture, writing, and metallurgy in human history. In southern Mesopotamia, the earliest cities emerged almost overnight in archaeological terms. Irrigation systems, city planning, and cuneiform writing all appear within a relatively short span of time, with no clear developmental pathway from more primitive systems. Sitchin and others have argued that this rapid advancement could not have occurred without outside guidance or intervention. Sumerian medical texts provide yet another curious detail. Some tablets describe surgical procedures, organ functions, and even prenatal development with striking clarity. One particular clay tablet describes the creation of a human being in what appears to be a laboratory setting, involving a mixture of clay and the blood of a god. Proponents claim this is not metaphorical but a mythologized record of genetic engineering. In Egypt, Peru, and Mesopotamia, elongated skulls have been discovered in burial sites. While most of these are attributed to intentional cranial deformation, a common cultural practice, some examples reportedly exhibit cranial volumes or suture patterns inconsistent with human anatomy. Though scientific consensus remains skeptical, these anomalies have fueled speculation about hybrid beings or non-human lineages with ties to the Anunnaki narrative. To believers, these artifacts and anomalies form a mosaic, each piece supporting the notion that human history, far from being the slow climb from ignorance, was accelerated by contact with advanced intelligences. Critics, however, caution that connecting these dots may rely more on interpretation than on hard evidence. Still, the persistence of these objects and the mystery they evoke continue to challenge the boundaries of conventional archaeology. Mainstream scholars and archaeologists approach the Anunnaki theory with firm skepticism, asserting that the narrative relies on speculative interpretation, misrepresented artifacts, and selective readings of ancient texts. One of the most consistent criticisms comes from linguists and Assyriologists, who argue that Zechariah Sitchin's translations of Sumerian cuneiform were fundamentally flawed. According to experts in the field, many of the tablets Sitchin cites do not say what he claims. Terms he interprets as evidence of spaceflight, genetic engineering, or interstellar travel are, by professional standards, either mistranslations or poetic metaphors rooted in ancient religious cosmology. For example, the term Anunnaki itself is often misunderstood. While Sitchin describes them as a distinct race of extraterrestrials, most scholars define the Anunnaki as a group of deities linked to the underworld and the divine assembly of gods, not as spacefaring beings. The idea that they came from the heavens is seen symbolically, referring to their divine status, not their literal descent in spacecraft. In Sumerian mythology, gods frequently act as personifications of natural forces, Enlil as wind and storm, Enki as water and wisdom. Their roles in creation stories are understood within a mythological framework, not a scientific one. The supposed depiction of the solar system on Seal VA 243 is another point of contention. Professional archaeologists argue that what Sitchin identifies as planets are more accurately stylized representations of stars or other symbolic elements. They assert that the Sumerians understood only 5 planets visible to the naked eye and had no concept of Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, let alone a mysterious planet X. Astronomical knowledge found in Babylonian and Sumerian texts, while impressive, is explained by centuries of skywatching and empirical recording, not by alien tutelage. Artifacts like the Baghdad battery are similarly demystified. While it's true that the objects can generate a small electric charge, the idea that they were used for electroplating is unproven. No metal-plated items from the era show signs of that process. Most historians believe the jars had a mundane function, possibly for storage or ritual. The interpretation as a battery remains speculative and lacks corroborating evidence from surrounding archaeological contexts. Critics also point to the lack of any physical evidence supporting advanced technology in the ancient Near East. No tools, machinery, or synthetic materials inconsistent with known ancient capabilities have been found at Sumerian sites. The stone structures, metalwork, and texts all fit within the scope of human development at the time. Scholars argue that the rapid advancement of civilizations like Sumer is not unusual given the right environmental, economic, and social conditions. The transition from nomadic to urban societies is well documented and does not require extraterrestrial input. The elongated skulls discovered in ancient graves are also explained through cultural practices. Cranial deformation was performed in many societies as a status symbol or religious act. Anthropologists point out that the skulls, when examined closely, do not possess non-human characteristics. The volume, cranial capacity, and bone density all fall within normal human variation. No DNA evidence has been produced to suggest an origin outside of the human gene pool. Academics emphasize that using ancient myths to construct literal histories can distort the cultural and spiritual worldview of early civilizations. Myth was a way of explaining the human experience, not a chronicle of real events. While the urge to interpret these stories through a modern lens is understandable, critics argue it often leads to conclusions that ignore the symbolic richness of ancient belief systems. In the scientific community, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The Anunnaki theory, while imaginative and provocative, is said to lack the empirical foundation needed for serious historical or archaeological acceptance. Its appeal lies more in narrative possibility than demonstrable fact. Yet the very act of questioning received history, many argue, is not harmful. It becomes problematic only when speculation replaces rigor, and mystery is taken as proof. The widespread fascination with the Anunnaki theory reveals a deeper psychological and cultural hunger to understand humanity's origins beyond what mainstream narratives provide. It taps into a primal sense of disconnection between the world we live in and the one we suspect may have existed before recorded history. For many, the theory offers an alternative creation myth that speaks not only to the mysteries of ancient times, but to the questions that modern life leaves unanswered. Why are we here? Who shaped our path? And what knowledge has been lost or hidden? Unlike traditional religious narratives that often place divine creation outside the realm of human comprehension, the Anunnaki theory suggests a more tangible link between creator and created. If humanity was engineered, as some versions propose, then the beings responsible were not abstract gods but intelligences with purpose, motives, and perhaps even accountability. This framing alters the human role in the cosmic order. It elevates our species not as accidental products of nature, nor as mere subjects of divine will, but as participants, possibly even victims, of a much larger story. This reinterpretation of our place in the universe has particular appeal in a world increasingly dominated by technology and existential uncertainty, as artificial intelligence, genetic editing, and space exploration push the boundaries of what is scientifically possible. The idea that similar breakthroughs may have occurred in the deep past feels less like fantasy and more like a possibility waiting to be rediscovered. The Anunnaki theory offers a mythos that aligns with modern themes: advanced beings manipulating biology, colonizing planets, and transferring knowledge across worlds. It also resonates with those who distrust established institutions. In an age where misinformation, secrecy, and corruption are perceived as systemic, alternative histories gain traction as expressions of resistance. The suggestion that academic and governmental authorities are concealing or misinterpreting ancient truths fits neatly into broader patterns of skepticism. Whether it's lost civilizations, hidden technologies, or suppressed knowledge, the theory gives believers a framework in which their doubts about the official story are not only validated but essential to discovering the truth. There is also a spiritual dimension. For some, the Anunnaki narrative becomes a new kind of theology, one rooted not in worship but in seeking forbidden knowledge. This echoes ancient traditions like Gnosticism, which emphasized enlightenment through secret understanding. The notion that our creators were not benevolent deities but manipulative overseers presents a darker, more complex origin story, one that invites questions rather than submission. It allows for reinterpretation, reinvention, and personal meaning. At the same time, belief in such theories can serve as a way of reclaiming agency. If our species was designed with intent, by beings who visited this planet long before recorded time, it suggests that we are part of a larger cosmic narrative, that we are not insignificant, that our myths, no matter how ancient or obscure, might contain pieces of a truth too vast for science or religion to contain. Yet this perspective also carries a certain melancholy. If the Anunnaki did create us, and then left, or were destroyed, then we are orphans of a forgotten race, navigating a world we were made for but never truly understood. The longing to reconnect with that past, to uncover what was lost or stolen, becomes a search not just for historical truth, but for identity. Ultimately, the cultural power of the Anunnaki theory lies in its ability to bridge myth and modernity, to offer a story in which the ancient gods were not figments of imagination, but agents of transformation. Beings who shaped not only human civilization, but the questions we still ask about who we are and why our story feels unfinished. The Anunnaki theory has not only persisted but flourished within the digital age, finding new life through media, pop culture, and online communities that thrive on fringe speculation. From best-selling books and viral YouTube documentaries to TikTok threads and immersive video games, the idea that humanity was engineered by ancient extraterrestrials has become deeply woven into modern myth-making. The Anunnaki have moved from obscure Mesopotamian deities to cultural icons in the alternative history movement, a transformation that reflects both technological shifts and a growing appetite for narratives that challenge institutional authority. In film and television, the core themes of the Anunnaki theory appear under various guises. Science fiction franchises such as Stargate, Prometheus, and Ancient Aliens have popularized the concept of ancient gods as alien beings who once walked the earth. Stargate, in particular, revolves around the idea that advanced extraterrestrials posing as gods used Stargate portals to travel between planets, enslaving early humans and manipulating cultures. While fictional, the show's plot closely parallels Sitchin's reinterpretations of Mesopotamian mythology, reinforcing those narratives in the public imagination. The History Channel's long-running series Ancient Aliens has played a pivotal role in mainstreaming the Anunnaki narrative. Through a mix of dramatic reenactments, speculative commentary, and visually striking animations, the show presents the theory as a viable alternative to academic consensus. It consistently draws from Mesopotamian myths, symbols, and structures to support claims of alien contact, often blurring the line between historical analysis and entertainment. Critics argue that the show misrepresents archaeology, yet its impact is undeniable. Millions of viewers have been introduced to the Anunnaki through these dramatized interpretations, many of whom then seek out further content online. On platforms like YouTube, entire channels are dedicated to decoding ancient texts, analyzing cuneiform translations, and drawing links between the Anunnaki and everything from global flood myths to modern alien abduction accounts. These videos often feature slow, suspenseful narration over looping imagery of ziggurats, star charts, and genetic code, crafting an atmosphere that feels investigative even when the conclusions are speculative. Social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram have allowed bite-sized versions of these ideas to go viral, often through attention-grabbing claims or mysterious imagery paired with music designed to evoke awe or unease. Podcasts, too, have become a vital space for the theory's growth. Long-form episodes allow for deeper discussion of ancient texts, comparative mythology, and speculative archaeology. Many hosts frame the Anunnaki story not merely as history, but as a revelation unfolding in real time, one that challenges everything from Darwinian evolution to Abrahamic religion. Some go further, linking the Anunnaki to global conspiracy theories involving elite bloodlines, suppressed technologies, and a hidden hand shaping world events. The video game industry has also capitalized on the theory's mythos. Titles like Assassin's Creed Origins and Destiny feature ancient alien architects, hidden histories, and godlike beings who influence humanity from the shadows. These games introduce younger audiences to the core elements of the theory, often without explicitly naming the Anunnaki, blending myth with science fiction in immersive digital worlds. Art, literature, and music echo these themes as well. Graphic novels, electronic music albums, and even fashion brands have incorporated symbols and names derived from Sumerian lore. The winged disc, the cuneiform for Anu, and references to Nibiru have become part of a broader visual and symbolic language that associates the Anunnaki with hidden knowledge and cosmic mystery. What began as an alternative reading of ancient texts has become a cultural phenomenon, shaped as much by media representation as by historical interpretation. In this ecosystem, evidence is often secondary to narrative power. The Anunnaki have become symbols of the unknown, of suppressed truths, and of the deep suspicion that the past is far stranger than we are taught to believe. As the theory spreads across screens and sound waves, it gains a kind of cultural legitimacy, not through academia, but through ubiquity. And in a world saturated with information, repetition often takes the place of proof. Beyond media representation and speculative archaeology lies a realm where the Anunnaki theory takes on its most fringe and metaphysical forms. In these esoteric circles, the narrative is no longer confined to ancient Sumer or physical interventions in early human history. Instead, the Anunnaki are reimagined as interdimensional beings, operating beyond the limits of time and space, engaging in a cosmic drama that stretches across galaxies and epochs. This version of the theory, while far removed from conventional evidence, taps into a growing subculture that blends mysticism, conspiracy, and spiritual awakening. In this framework, the Anunnaki are sometimes described not as extraterrestrials in the traditional sense, but as hyperdimensional intelligences, entities who can manipulate reality through frequency, thought, or energy. These interpretations borrow heavily from Gnostic traditions, theosophy, and modern channeled material, which depict creation not as a singular divine act, but as a complex, layered process involving various levels of consciousness. Here, the Anunnaki are framed as either custodians or corruptors of this process, beings who once guided the evolution of sentient life, but later turned to control and domination. Some theorists suggest that the Anunnaki created humanity not just biologically, but spiritually, engineering a hybrid species whose consciousness could be manipulated or siphoned. This idea often appears alongside concepts like loosh harvesting, soul traps, and artificial reincarnation cycles, suggesting that the human experience itself is being orchestrated by non-physical forces. In this view, Earth is not simply a planet, but a containment system, an energetic farm in which human emotion, especially fear and conflict, is harvested by higher dimensional entities for purposes that remain opaque. Others take the theory in a more hopeful direction, proposing that the Anunnaki were originally benevolent beings who gave early humans the tools for enlightenment, only for their legacy to be distorted over time. In these versions, remnants of their teachings exist in hidden texts, sacred geometry, and ancient monuments aligned with celestial bodies. These are seen as keys to awakening dormant capacities within the human mind, restoring forgotten knowledge and reconnecting with the original purpose of our creation. The return of Nibiru, or the awakening of cosmic consciousness, is then framed not as an external event, but as a shift in human awareness. New Age movements often merge the Anunnaki narrative with ideas of DNA activation, light codes, and multidimensional ascension. Some proponents claim that modern humans carry genetic markers from these beings, and that through meditation, frequency work, or altered states of consciousness, individuals can access ancestral memories encoded in their DNA. These practices are presented not as belief, but as experiential knowledge, direct contact with higher intelligences beyond the material plane. At the most speculative end of the spectrum, theories connect the Anunnaki to other mythic and esoteric systems. They are equated with the fallen angels of Judeo-Christian lore, the archons of Gnosticism, or the reptilian overlords described in conspiracy theories. In these accounts, the Anunnaki are not one race but a faction within a larger cosmic conflict between forces of light and darkness. Earth and humanity are seen as a contested prize in this eternal war, a battleground not just of geopolitics, but of spirit and soul. While these interpretations are often dismissed by scholars and scientists alike, they persist because they fulfill a deeper function. They offer not just an explanation for human origins, but a narrative that situates humanity within a vast, hidden cosmology. For those drawn to these ideas, the story of the Anunnaki becomes more than theory. It becomes a lens through which to understand everything: suffering, knowledge, identity, destiny. Whether seen as liberators, jailers, or forgotten architects, the Anunnaki are no longer just beings of myth or history. They become symbols of our deepest questions, and perhaps our oldest memories. The Anunnaki theory, in all its forms, from grounded historical reinterpretation to far-reaching metaphysical speculation, serves as a mirror reflecting humanity's evolving relationship with the unknown. At its core lies a timeless question: where do we come from, and who or what played a role in shaping us? Whether one views the Anunnaki as mythological constructs, misunderstood deities, ancient astronauts, or cosmic architects, their story continues to captivate because it challenges the conventional boundaries of belief, science, and recorded history. What distinguishes this theory from other ancient origin stories is its fusion of sacred myth with the language of modern science. In a world where genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, interstellar exploration are no longer confined to science fiction, the idea that such feats were accomplished long ago resonates with new intensity. The technological age has made it easier to imagine that ancient texts describing flying machines, genetic manipulation, or celestial wars were more than metaphors, that they were echoes of a sophisticated reality lost to time. This blurring of lines between past and future, myth and science, also speaks to a deeper cultural longing. In an era marked by rapid change and existential uncertainty, the notion that we were created with intent, that our DNA carries the imprint of cosmic intelligence, offers a sense of meaning. It reframes the human story not as a random outcome of evolution, but as part of a deliberate design, one whose implications we are only beginning to rediscover. Yet this allure comes with risks. The very malleability of the theory, its capacity to adapt and absorb new ideas, makes it difficult to verify or falsify. It can become an echo chamber, where every anomaly confirms the larger narrative, and every contradiction is explained away as part of a deeper deception. In this way, the theory mirrors the structure of belief itself, not a fixed body of knowledge, but a living system of symbols, interpretations, and intuitive leaps. At the same time, dismissing it outright may also miss the point. The persistence of the Anunnaki narrative signals something important, a widespread sense that official history is incomplete, that the archaeological record, as impressive as it is, leaves too many questions unanswered, that humanity's spiritual and intellectual leaps may not be fully explained by material conditions alone. These tensions, between skepticism and wonder, evidence and imagination, are what keep the story alive. In the end, the Anunnaki theory occupies a space not unlike the ancient myths it draws from, part truth, part allegory, part reflection of the era in which it's told. It is a modern myth for a postmodern world, open-ended, multi-layered, and deeply personal. Whether seen as beings from the stars or projections of human consciousness, the Anunnaki endure because they represent the unknown itself. Not just the mystery of where we came from, but the larger mystery of what it means to be human in a cosmos we are only beginning to understand. Thanks for listening. This has been Ancient Conspiracy Files. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Ancient Conspiracy Files on Spotify. Subscribe now.